7 people have been nabbed for torching a bus and vandalising 4 police vans in Cape Town. The incidents took place in Nyanga, Phillipi and Samora Machel. Golden Arrow buses have also been the target of attacks in the Western Cape recently. And just yesterday, our reporter Nobesuthu Hejana brought us the story of attacks on PRASA employees and contractors working on the Cape's Central Rail Corridor. Let's get more from the City of Cape Town's JP Smith. Thank you very much, JP. Always good to talk to you. So arrests might be a deterrent, so let's focus on that for just a moment. How many people have been arrested today, and what are the overall arrests looking like for vandalism specifically of infrastructure?
I can't give you broad vandalism for infrastructure arrests, but I can speak to you only about what happened specifically to the Nyanga matter today and yesterday. There were 7 arrests today and 6 yesterday. The arrest today was for the attempts to set on fire facilities at the Phillipi building, where there was actually a tip-off from the community beforehand, which allowed us to impact more effectively. And the other arrests were for stone throwing and arson, attempted arson attacks. And yesterday, similar ones. There were also additional to that arrests for people with large outstanding number of warrants, traffic warrants, including 2 of the top 100. So these are people generally with in excess of 100 warrants of arrest relating to a wide range of traffic offences.
So 13 arrests in total. Can you give us some you've given us an idea of the kind of crimes they were committing and the charges that they will be facing?
So this will be for public violence, for the Criminal Matters Amendment Act relating to critical infrastructure. So some of them are extremely serious charges. I'm presuming that amongst these there may also be charges relating to the conspiracy charges to commit murder, or charges relating to assault or assault GBH, in that there were persons involved in public violence incidents where our staff responded to public violence incidents and persons were arrested as a consequence. So there will be some assault and violence charges in between as well.
Not all the attacks have the same motive, JP. We know that turf wars, gang conflict, extortion, community protests, opportunistic crime, these all have a role to play. Break it down for us. What are we looking at in terms of the attacks specifically on buses?
So I think the buses unfortunately follow a similar pattern to what we saw happening on the trains. We now have testimony from somebody arrested for the attacks on the trains, which indicated that elements within the minibus taxi industry were behind that in terms of trying to eliminate competition. And we have seen over time, prior to the operations that the city did, the normal enforcement operations for public transport that the city did in Nyanga last week, that sparked this violence. We have seen a fairly constant amount of violence against Golden Arrow buses since the beginning of the year and before. So there is a steady and sustained attempt at eliminating Golden Arrow's rolling stock, just as there was with the trains, so as to eliminate competition. And of course, this is not a situation that anybody can tolerate. You need a free market situation where commuters choose where they want to be and are not forced by one particular sector of that of the public transport sector to use their services or to have a monopoly on that services. But there's a second element here, and that is that there are elements within the public transport sector, predominantly in Nyanga, because this is the only part of Cape Town where this really happens continuously, where every time we do enforcement operations, there is retaliation by burning infrastructure, city vehicles, even private vehicles, and especially Golden Arrow buses. And that is that the minibus taxi industry, and specifically the sedan taxis, or so-called Amapela, believe themselves to be exempt from enforcement, and that any enforcement applied to them must be met with violent retaliation. And this, of course, is an untenable situation, because you cannot say that any particular sector can be exempt from the law. The same laws, in terms of our constitution, must apply to everybody equally. And if you start making concessions where you say, well, we are going to not do enforcement here because these persons become violent, you are enabling and tolerating that violence, and it will escalate, as we've seen it escalate over the last decade. And what is the next step? A murder is committed, and you then choose not to prosecute a taxi boss because of the fear of violence. So we're stumbling into a totally untenable situation, and that's why on this situation, the city has drawn a line in the sand and said, we're not going to tolerate it this time. We are going to persist with these operations for however long it takes in order to achieve the cessation of violence, and we will not discontinue until the taxis stop engaging in violence, and we will continue to impound more and more vehicles until the taxis behave reasonably and obey the law.
Well, thank you again for your time and for clarifying that situation. That was the City of Cape Town's JP Smith.